Today I'm going to show you how I made this 1 to 10 scale diorama of Michael Jackson when his hair caught fire during a Pepsi commercial in 1984. And if you stick around to the end, I'll show you how it can be yours. I started by sculpting Michael's head full size. I'm packing clay onto an armature. I'm using water-based clay called wet clay that I bought off a man called Brian who was shot in the foot in 2005. Not because he sells clay, for other reasons, but you'd have to ask Brian. I start with a cardboard cutout of Michael's profile, and I use that as a template to set the proportions, and then I begin packing out the sides, building up his skull, filling out his brow, adding some more mass onto his beautiful chiseled jaw. I don't know exactly what face Michael was making at the time, but I chose a kind of an ow lip. So this all happened during the filming of a Pepsi commercial in 1984. The ad consisted of the Jackson 5 singing Billie Jean, but with revised lyrics about how delicious Pepsi is. I actually prefer this version to the original. I don't know anyone called Billie Jean, but I do enjoy Pepsi, so I can relate more to the Pepsi version. Anyway, as Michael was coming out, some pyrotechnics went off too close to his head, and his hair caught fire. He was rushed away and treated for second-degree burns to his scalp. Pepsi settled out of court, and Michael donated the $1.5 million to the Bratman's Medical Center in California. They even named a burn ward after him, but it's closed now. Here I'm just adding noodles of clay to build up his jerry curls. The commercial was directed by a chap called Bob Giraldi. I reached out to Bob for an interview, but I didn't hear from him, which is fair enough, I suppose. Bob also directed the music video for Michael Jackson's song Beat It, a song about tough guys. It's interesting to see the 1980s idea of a New York tough guy. It might be perceived as quite effeminate by today's standards. Not that effeminate men can't be tough, on the contrary. I once watched my Uncle Wayne kick a bouncer half to death outside a nightclub in Vienna. And there's nothing Wayne likes more than popping on a set of kitten heels and floating about his kitchen to Rihanna. And there he is, Michal Makshikish. I then sculpted his body in 1 to 5 scale, using myself in similar garb as a reference for how his clothing may have fallen against his body. I wish Michael had chosen a more dynamic pose, but he didn't, so this is what we're working with. There is some grainy footage of this incident on YouTube. I'm not going to share any links here, as it may be too traumatic for some people. And the last thing I want to do is upset Michael Jackson fans. I'm using an oil-based clay to build up the muscular structure of his body. I will then scan this and his head using futuristic technology and combine them within a computer program before electrically printing them. I gave him a quick head just to see the whole body as one unit. Looks like Ned Dennehy. Google him. Just adding on some clay there to create the flick of his jacket, as his jacket flicked. Flacked. It's not flacked, is it? Man, it's flacked, I want! Just using a little loop tool there to refine some secondary forms. As a child, I was a big fan of Michael Jackson. So you can imagine my amazement at 8 years old when my best friend in school, Dickie Doyle, told me he had met MJ in a local shopping centre and even gotten his autograph. I was incandescent with jealousy when Dickie showed up the next day with the autograph, which I've recreated here. But over the years, the penny slowly dropped as I came to realise it was unlikely that Michael would have had time to complete the shaded border around the autograph. Nevertheless, Dickie and I remained best friends right up until the end of school, our relationship only souring when I broke a sacred pact and had full vaginal intercourse with his older sister Claire. And what began as 30 seconds of unbridled passion on a leather futon has now turned into decades of anxiety, for I now live in constant fear that Dickie will retaliate and have spiteful sex with my sister Brenda. And to this day, I have lived with the image of her breath condensing on his ice-cold forehead as he spills his revenge between her kidneys. Dickie, if you're watching this, why not give me a call and we can bury the hatchet? Much like I buried my hatchet in your sister. I brought him into Odyssey Studios to be scanned. Together! They were having a meeting upstairs, so I had to do the scanning in the foyer. I wasn't too pleased about this because that's where they keep Abe. Abe is a big 5-axis milling machine, and I do not like Abe. Not because I think the robots are going to take over or anything, just because Abe is a bit of a creep. I sent the files to the sagacious Laura Hurtado Mierdas, who brought them into ZBrush and did her trickery with them. Here she is adding some textures to his clothing. She also gave him a pair of loafers, which I was not bothered to sculpt. Gracias, Laura.
De nada, visita mía.
Then I 3D printed it, along with this sculpture my wife did of herself, sitting on a mushroom cloud with bananas in her hair, holding Hitler's severed head. When you find the one, never let them go. Then it was time to give Mickey a lick of paint. I primed him with some grey plastic primer and began using acrylic paint. This would have been before Michael started treating his vitiligo with skin bleaching, presumably the opposite technology to that which turned Kylie Jenner into the proud black woman she is today. Just painting his hair there with some black, some eyebrows, and a couple of little details on his face. Michael's clothes were very shimmery on the night in question, so it was important to get the glitter right. Mixed some lacquer with iridescent powders and blue steel and glitters to really make his attire pop. Yeah. And there he is. Shaman. Ow! The stage was made of scaffolding, so I created miniature scaffolding by drilling out some cake pop sticks and drawing up these miniature scaffolding couplings in Fusion 360. I then printed 1 billion of them. They clip together so you can... Jesus, look at the state of my fingers. It's like watching a hobo's colonoscopy. That's better. So you can turn them to whatever degree you want. Then I got some bamboo skewers and began assembling the scaffold stage. Then I used the calipers and a syringe full of superglue to stick everything together nice and neat. I have to say there's nothing more terrifying than working with a syringe full of superglue. The urge to jab it into one's leg is concerning, to say the least. I then drew up a load of these step dicky doos and stuck them together on a piece of brass to create the stairs. Then I got some more scaffold couplings and fashioned the staircase. Next I stuck some 1mm acrylic to the base to make it nice and shiny. And the same for the riser, upon which Michael will perch. I wasn't sure how to make the trusses that hold all the lights, so I asked fellow YouTube craft maker man Bill Making Stuff how he would do it. And Bill said,
"Yeah, hello Bobby. I probably just looked for like an old toy in a charity shop that had that kind of framework, or I'd just make it out of cake pop sticks and with super glue, something like that. Well, it probably looks shite."
I took Bill's advice and created the truss using bamboo skewers. However, I would rather push aquarium gravel down my meatus than make 7 more of these, so I printed them. You might be wondering why I chose to capture this moment of Michael's otherwise illustrious career. Well, the reason I did so is because this event holds enormous significance. Not just because the King of Pop caught fire, but because this incident took place on the exact midpoint of Michael Jackson's life, down to the very day. Now, I first became aware of this when I read it in a comment section on Reddit. I am, however, not prepared to believe most things I read on the internet, nor am I mathematically proficient enough to work it out for myself, so I sought help from Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter, chair of the Winton Centre for Risk and Evidence Communication in the Centre for Mathematical Sciences at the University of Cambridge. And he said,
"Yeah, probably."
I felt that perhaps this needed further corroboration. Thankfully, mathematician and science communicator Matt Parker has done a deep dive into the mathematics of Michael Jackson's life. There's a link in the description. I suggest you check it out. It's class.
I've blown this whole thing wide open.
Next, I made a lot of lights, which I drew in Fusion 360 and painted. Then I used a laser cutting machine to cut out the barn door flaps. Is that what they're called? I put a little lens in there as well. And some gels to create the flashy 80s lights. I stuck those onto the trusses. And then I secured it with a bit of super glue. Next, I tidied up the base by running the edges through a table saw. Remove the plastic and give the edge a lick of paint. And there it is. Showbiz. Pop my Mickey in. I had gotten this far and realised I hadn't properly addressed the idea of Michael being on fire, so I 3D printed a figure in wax. Some of you might think I'm going to put a wick up the centre and create some kind of Michael Jackson candle, but here at Bobby Fingers, I like to think we treat our subjects with a bit more respect. Instead, I'm going to make him into a bronze oil lamp. I don't have access to a foundry, so I'm going to use Bronze Age technology to achieve this. I start by making a mixture of sand, clay, and horse's caca. I then add some water to create a slurry, which I will allow sit for a while. Next, I took some beeswax and created a base for Michael to stand upon, and some sprues to allow the molten bronze to fill the mould. Then I got all your ideas for dioramas, and I collected them together and printed them on a piece of paper. Popped them into the stove and then introduced a flame. I then very awkwardly collected the ashes in a little cup, which I then dusted over the wax model. This will break the surface tension and stop the horse's caca slurry sludge from beating up on the model. I then build up layers of this mixture to create a mould. The fibres in the horse's caca act as a support structure to stop the mould from breaking apart. I created a dough which I then packed on and smoothed the layers out with a bit of water. Next I picked these mushrooms. I don't know what they're called in English, but in Irish we call them pookie pile. I put a handful of them into a dehydrator for a couple of hours. An sin choras piasa mala e broca. Fascus na pookie tiramila chéile. Agus choras a broca iad, le breanaí an fuisce and a squaz of lemon. Sláinte daí párig Bucko. When the mould was fully dry, I brought it to the west of the world, where Billy Fingers makes magical things happen. You start with a fire in a furnace. This'll need to get up to 1100 degrees Celsius and more, so we need a big bag of charcoal. Then you bellow and bellow and bellow, with the mould sitting on the fire, pissing out all its wax. Then you stare into the wet metal, this soup of light that screamed from the guts of a star as it shed its skin eons ago. And yet, in the life of our universe, only a few grains of sand have fallen into the glass below. Our mother is an infant. Still we take the purest of things from inside her and leave her with such burdens. Because we break the things we love. And monsters sharpen their claws in the void where youth is confused with beauty. I imagine a lamp like this illuminating your bureau as you pen a letter to an estranged cousin, asking them to return your Mudvayne CDs. Perhaps you're writing a letter to a sportsman you admire, telling them to keep up the good work. Or maybe, just maybe, you're writing to an old school friend, saying, Dickie, don't fuck my sister. Seek not revenge through your penis, for penises should never be served cold.
Oh, you can't write crap like that.
This is actor and director Constance Zimmer, who was featured in such television shows as Entourage, Unreal, and House of Cards. Constance was 14 years old when her friend invited her to be an extra in the Pepsi commercial. She was kind enough to share her experience with me.
I can't even tell you, like the day that she asked me, I might have cried a little. I might have peed my pants a little. Everybody knew I was obsessed with Michael Jackson. My mother bought me a life-size Michael Jackson doll that lived in my bedroom. I might have creeped people out a little bit, but anyways, it was as if you were at a concert, right? I mean, it was just the greatest day of my life. And then came out on stage and all the fireworks went off. And I mean, everybody was screaming. It was like the coolest thing we had ever seen. There was like a moment where he was, coming out and still performing. Like he didn't know that anything was wrong. And what was weird is it was also felt like an optical illusion, because you could tell that something was still lit. Your brain would not allow you to think or believe that he was actually on fire. All of a sudden, all these people jumped on him, with blankets and everything. And it got like dead silent. Honestly, I started bawling my eyes out because I thought that he was like gonna die. I think it was also like going from the most exciting moment of my life to then like the most scared, terrifying moment of my life surrounding Michael Jackson.
Strong as blood, we were brothers then, and I had your back till I broke that patch. Saying promises ain't worth nothing, man. But I did you wrong, now I can't move on. Everything was cool until she sat on the bed, telling me she lonely and in need of a friend. Just forget my brother and come on over here. And before I know it, I was flat on my back. 30 seconds, that was that. And now I live my life in constant fear. You don't fuck my sister, no way. He's talking like you did me so bad, boy. I think you don't fuck my sister, not today. He's talking like she wants me so bad, boy. I think you don't fuck my sister, no way. He's talking like you did me so bad, boy. I think you don't fuck my sister. He's talking like she wants me so bad, boy. I think he don't fuck my sister. Don't forget to love you now. Don't forget to love you now. Don't forget now. You don't fuck my sister.
When I was 5 years old, I accidentally pulled a wardrobe down on myself and snapped my left femur in half. I spent 6 weeks bedridden, with weights attached to my shattered limb. The first nights were spent in the men's ward, where I slept among 20 or so elderly patients in various degrees of distress. It remains to this day the most lonely and frightening experience of my life. One morning I saw my father walking through the door, shuffling to some unheard song. He was wearing a Walkman, which he then placed upon my head. My ears filled with Michael Jackson's voice, and in the misery of a rural hospital in 1980s Ireland, my life changed forever. I listened to those tapes over and over again until they crackled and spat and had to be replaced. And in the trenches of my sorrow, I found a power in his music. There was no loneliness, no boiled sausages, no clanging of half-full bedpans on cast-iron hospital trolleys, no pain, just Michael, his music, and me. And I wasn't afraid anymore, because he saved me that day. And I just want to say thank you, Michael, wherever you are. Presumably in hell for fucking those kids. Allegedly! The GPS coordinates to this location are hidden throughout the video. If you find it first and dig it up, then it's yours. Congratulations to my patron Lord Biscuit, who found Steven Seagal in the Surrey Hills in the south of England. And if you want to get a head start and see these videos early, why not become a patron, like this shower of dorks? I need a lot more support or else I'll have to stop making these videos, so sign up to Patreon and I'll keep at it. See you next time on Bobby Fingers.
Is it good?
Nah.